Welcome to Real Estate Today with Yvonne Candy. Learn how to invest in today's residential and commercial real estate. Get informed and get the latest news and trends. Whether you're an investor, home buyer, or homeowner, or just want to be entertained, you're in the right place. And here's your host, Yvonne Candy.
Hello, everyone. I hope all of you have had a nice week and weekend. You know, I love doing this show. I learned so much. I think I know something about almost any subject. Really, just ask me. I feel like I'm a walking Google search engine or something. I started to say a walking encyclopedia. Do they still have those? They got them in the library, I'm sure. I bet some of you millenniums never even seen an encyclopedia. But I owe it all to my guests, like our guest today, Jacqueline Huynh from Integrative Minds, a cutting-edge firm specializing in helping individuals, families, and businesses create a lifetime of harmony, unity, and engagement. Jacqueline is also a partner of True Legacy Wealth, a coaching program that helps families create multi-generational wealth. Welcome to the show, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much for having me in your show, Yvonne.
Thank you for coming. Jacqueline, you have created a fantastic company, and you're the partner of a great program, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But this great entrepreneur that you became didn't come easy. You had a pretty tough background. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I don't think we ever want to have a rough background, but I came over here to the United States with my 4 younger sister and my parents when I was 7 years old as a refugee from Vietnam in 1975. And because it was end of the war, the only thing we had was the clothes on our back. And, we knew that we were safe and we had our freedom and we knew about the American dream, at least my dad did. And we were committed to succeed, to honor all of the people we left behind, family members and friends, and some of those people died in the war. So we wanted to at least honor their name.
Beautiful.
That was one. Yeah. I don't think that my life, I had some major losses in my life, and I felt victimized. And I think it's not an unusual story. I think everyone has similar stories probably as mine, but I grew up in an Asian family and my dad was military, so became an Asian and military. And my parents' parenting style, I don't know if you came from a military family, but I think you'll kind of understand. My parents' parenting style was very top-down, shut down, and really all about obedience. Now, they did have incredible values and principles, but they really lacked in affection and self-growth. So I was taught as a kid, and you might relate to this, that good kids follow orders. And if we weren't, it was a problem with us kids. So the parents just needed to yell louder, punish harder, or just blame someone else.
Yeah, I heard military parents were very strict. You go to bed at a certain time, you wash up at a certain time.
And then you add then you add the Asian component to it, which, then you're talking about, we had to get an A. B was not was even a choice. And we had to, there was goals to be set and college to go to. So it was even harder. And so what happens, I think, when we experience this, especially as a child, is you start shutting your feelings in. And you just are like a robot. And when my youngest sister was 30 years old, she committed suicide.
Oh.
And it was 1 week after her boyfriend committed suicide. So we actually had two, it was like, people said it was like a Romeo and Juliet kind of a thing. And then I was in a marriage that was abusive, and I just didn't know who I was anymore.
What do you think made you get into an abusive relationship? Do you think that it was your strict background?
I went through counseling, I went through coaching, I went through NLP, so many things. And I think we stay with what's familiar. right? Because what's familiar feels safe.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons I went into that relationship. But I think the other reason is I came from a large family. I was never alone. All of a sudden, I was out of college. I mean, I had a boyfriend as soon as I got into college. After college, I had another boyfriend. And then when I met my ex-husband now, but he was my husband then, it was just like that fear of being alone partly and not, all my friends were getting married and how come I'm not married? So you just go with what society and whatever else is doing. So I think it's a combination of both because at that point, you don't know who you are. You're just kind of following what everybody else's beliefs are. You don't even know what's right. At least that's how I see it now, looking back at it. But when you're in your 20s, you think you know everything.
Sure. But do you think that it's like a thin line between being strict and abuse?
Well, there's a difference between abuse and discipline. And I think that the old-fashioned way, it was all about abuse because abuse is about control. This is how I see it. Abuse is about control. You do what I say. I don't care what you say. I know what's right, right? Discipline, a good analogy is, if you speed, if you drive your car too fast, that the discipline is that you might get a ticket and you're going to have to deal with that discipline. And so for me, once I've learned the difference, discipline isn't about power control. It's about safety. We have these rules in place for your safety, and we talk about what it is that's the consequence for it. And so that's where I think the old ways of, trying to keep kids in line with abuse, I guess what you can call it, but, to them it's called discipline, is more about control. And there's a lot of fear there because as a parent, it's like, okay, well, I have a fear that if my kids don't do this, I maybe not look good or whatever it is. I think now we're learning about child development, the brain, how things are affected, parenting. I mean, I think when Dr. Spock came out with his book, people started really taking a look at how we parent. And now you can find so many things on parenting and how to be really effective because what I find when you are strict with your children like that, all it causes is rebellion later on. Because the kids, they all remember that. It's like, well, I don't have control now, but you wait. When I have control, this is what I'm going to do. And then when they hit their teenage years, the rebellion starts. And it's just a way of getting back. So now they're just trying to get the power and control back. And then you've got chaos. I think that children need a voice. And one of the things that I talk about, the three things, the massive mistakes that parents make that really repel their children, one of them is the fact that we don't actively listen to our children. Stephen Covey, he's a famous author in this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is like one of the top books that's been sold. But what he says is one high habit that people who are effective do is they first seek to understand, then to be understood. And I think as a lot of parents think that, well, I'm older, I know more, so I don't need to understand your point of view. This is how it is. So many people are seeking to be understood. Like, no, you need to understand me. No, it's about me instead of tell me what I'm not understanding about you. Tell me what it is from your point of view. And so I love that quote that Stephen Covey says is first seek to understand, then to be understood.
I understand exactly what you're saying. And I got to get that book too. I got to, read it. Yeah.
I mean, and Dale Carnegie, he wrote a really great book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie, he's old, and he wrote a book.
Yes.
He wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and everything, all of the steps that he talks about, all of the ways to do it, it's all about the other person. I think that every parent should read that, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because the only way that you're going to influence, if you can influence your kids, you can influence anybody. one
right.
thing. And that book is amazing because it talks about, it's really all about, stop trying to win the conversation. Just listen to the other person, because there is no winning. Because even when you go into a conversation and you're like, I'm going to convince them my point, you really don't. It's really just about being, understanding each other. And so I think that is a better way of not just parenting, just being with, because these are human beings. Just because they're little doesn't mean that they don't have a mind, they don't have feelings.
Sure,
It's just another relationship. And when you can cultivate that, you're able to influence, because really what we want to do is be influential to our children, for them to look up to us. And when we do need to say something that's important, especially in their teenage years, about sex, drugs, stress in schools and decisions they have to make, they actually respect our decision, because we earn that respect, because we, from the time they were little, we seek to understand what they are feeling, thinking, and why they do things.
You have turned a negative background into something positive. You're this great entrepreneur, but you're also a great mother. How does that feel?
It's a work in progress. That's one thing about success. I think you understand, right? There's not an end. Success is, and greatness is just a journey. There's never a time where I feel like, wow, I'm a great mother, I'm a successful entrepreneur. To me, it's just a journey that I just keep growing. And I have a podcast, and at the end of my podcast, I always say, keep on learning and keep on growing, because that's how you keep becoming better. And there's always somebody better, and there's always someone worse, right? So it's just compared to what?
Yeah. They say you're going to learn, and until the day you die. You never learn everything, and you never stop learning. So.
No. And I don't think any parent is ever going to, I think when my kids are in their 20s and 40s and 50s, there'll still be something they say, well, I wish my mom was like this, right? There's always going to be something where we screwed up on and we messed up on. And I think that we also have to forgive ourselves and have that self-acceptance that we may not know everything and we are going to mess up. But as long as you own up to your mistakes and you show your children that you can do that, and you make a change, because one of the things that I talk about to my children, and just in general when I do speak engagement, is that the word I'm sorry is thrown around way too much and really doesn't have validity when there is an action to back up the statement, I'm sorry.
Actions speak louder than words. That's what they say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, actions speak louder than words.
And you know this, your kids will watch every action you do, and if it's not the same as what you say, if you say, alcohol is bad for you, and you should meditate if you're stressed, or go work out, and the first thing you do is grab a drink when you're stressed out, they don't hear that.
Right. Yeah, and your environment plays a heck of a part in how you raise your children. I mean, you can tell them all day long to do this and do that, but it's what you do in front of them that they be paying attention to. You said that you can turn fear into an asset. How does fear play an important part in one's success?
Well, I think first you have to understand what fear is, because I think we're all, we're afraid of fear. But let's break it down. So fear is really a primal feeling that arises when we feel threatened and can have physical symptoms, right? Like people will get sweaty hands, their heart would increase. So first of all, fear can actually be a useful feeling when it comes to keeping us safe. But what actually often happens is that we are fearful of any or all future events. So then that becomes really fear we call worry or anxiety. So in this case, we're not really feeling fear as a primal feeling, but rather worrying about the discomfort, the humiliation of whatever that's not going to happen that we want to happen in the future. So a lot of us will hesitate going forward. Maybe we have a great idea and we're like, no, I don't want to do that. Maybe we're in a bad relationship, a bad job, and we don't want to go step out of it. You just want to crawl under your cover, and hide from the world. You just don't want to get out there. So you're not sure you should be putting yourself there because there's always the risk of failing. And some people are afraid of succeeding, which I actually see a lot more of, people afraid of succeeding, because we all know what failing is. We don't know what succeeding is. So people will back off of that. So how I see you can make fear to play to your advantage, to make it an asset, is if you tell yourself fear really means growth. And you think back of all the times that you completed something. Maybe you got your high school diploma. Maybe you got that certificate. Maybe you beat, your running time. You finished your cooking class that you never thought you could do. Whatever it is, you grew, and it was a little scary before you started. So we want to train our mind to focus on what we did that was successful, even though it was fearful.
Do you think that conquering fear is not only just do it, but also try to live in the present a little bit more? Plan for the future, but live in the present?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like calculated fear, right? You want to, it's like recently we had the huge lotto jackpot, and people just buy it. So that's not calculated. But then there are people, with my real estate investing thing, nothing is for sure when you're putting money out hoping to get a higher return. But when you calculate what's going to happen, the chances of you succeeding is much better. And I think fear is the same way. Let's take an example. You want to quit your job because you want to start a business. Well, that's scary. Now, you can just quit your job and have absolutely no plan and just wing it. That's not calculated. So, yes, you should be fearful of that. But if you've done some research, you have a mentor, you set some money aside, and you have learned, taken classes or, somehow to start a business, then that's a calculated risk. And there should be less fear in that.
Do you mean when you say you can stay connected in today's pressure cooker?
I think this is something maybe just parents realize. It's just there's so much pressure today, not just from being a parent, but from watching our kids. I mean, my daughter is now in high school, and the pressure she has with class. In 8th grade, they were taking PSAT tests in preparation, for taking the SAT, which they don't even take until their senior year, 4 years later. And as a parent, I see the pressure my children are going through, her friends are going through, and me having the pressure to be, being there for them, and then dealing with all the sports, driving. You see, it's like just meeting the daily needs. It feels like I'm keeping my head above water sometimes, and running from doctor's appointment with the kids or their practice or sporting events. Sometimes it just seems like a big blur. And so there's a lot of pressure as a family as a whole. And I think trying to stay above water, one step ahead, and stay connected, there's some things that we can do to kind of relieve that pressure. And the one thing that has been proven is quality time with your kids. That connection time, that real, not just them being in the house, and they're in their room and you're in the living room, or they're on the TV and you're on your computer. That's not quality time. Quality time is sitting together in a car or at your home, and you're actually talking about what their life is like, what's going on in their daily life. And research has shown just eating together and having conversation together is actually the best defense against negative peer influences. It lowers the rates of substance abuse, teen pregnancy, depression, obesity, eating disorder. It actually even increases grade point average self-esteem. And I know resilience is a huge thing that we want our children to have. And just spending those quality time with the kids helps that.
Just as long as you don't bring up a subject that they don't like to talk about. I have a teenager at home, and sometimes when he comes from school and we get ready to eat dinner, so, I mean, I don't care if it's just me and him. We'll sit down and talk, and I'll bring up girls.
Yeah.
Who was that? Who were you talking to on the phone? Was that girl?
Well, here's the thing, but that's their subject that they probably feel the boys probably uncomfortable talking to mom, to mom about. But the reason why they say to connect as often as possible, they say 3 to 5 times a week just to spend meals together, is because you'll be more aware of changes in your children's demeanor and behavior. Right. And they might not tell you that they have a girlfriend or boyfriend like that, but you'll know there's nuances that change, so that maybe you'll take some private time away from the family, maybe on your drive, that you can say something about that. Like, I've noticed something. Is there anything you want to talk to? Or maybe have a family member talk to them.
Yeah, I always make a mistake and bring up that subject, and he's like,
yeah, exactly. It's embarrassing. I know sometimes I'll forget. I'll give my son a kiss, and he's in junior high. He's in sixth right now. Just on the cheek, like, "Bye, honey. Have a good day." And he looks at me in horror, because I can tell he's wondering if his friend saw my mother kiss me.
Yeah. Please. That's what I get. Please.
Right.
And then you miss those days when you could do that, right?
Exactly. And, they'll come back. They say supposedly in their 20s, they actually, are more open to those things.
Oh, yes, they are. It's funny. It just goes around in a circle, because when they get to be in their 20s, 30s, they can't stop kissing you. And you're like, really? Why are you kissing? Why are you kissing me so much? And then when you're like 12 or 13, you have to, you got to fight with them just to get a kiss. So I don't know. It's funny.
Exactly. And I think the girls are easier, because my daughter kind of just lets me do it, even though she's in high school. My son, though, it's a little different. I think he gets more embarrassed.
Yeah, girls are different.
if I try to give him affection, he's like, "No, I'm a boy." But we were like that. That's a part of being teenager, is their mind is developing, where they're now stepping out and developing their own their own self, and so they're trying to detach from us, and so release a little bit of the string, so that they can have that, and knowing that they will come back.
What was your inspiration for starting the Legacy program, and what do you mean by multi-generational wealth?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, wealth, people sometimes think wealth as financial money. And what I tell people is financial asset is really a byproduct of intellectual and human asset, which is what you know, who you know, your values, your beliefs. Because think about it. If you took all the money away from Warren Buffett, his home, everything that has financial asset to him, with what he knows and who he knows, what are the chances you think that he'll make his money back?
A great chance.
A great chance, right? Now, you give someone like the lotto, we know that people who win lottery, a majority of them end up filing bankruptcy. But they had all that money, right? It's because they don't have that knowledge of the human asset and of the intellectual asset. So this is what we talk about in the legacy program. You want to leave a legacy, and I know as a parent, not only do I want to leave a legacy of wealth in financial asset, but I also want to leave a wealth in human. So people that I know to guide my children, who are there for them, and intellectual asset, which is what I know, what I've learned, my values, my beliefs, to help them achieve success.
What you want to leave them is a mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to leave them with that, because then you'll know that they'll be able to go on with their wealth. Generation through generation, they'll be able to teach your children be able to teach their children, And I
Yep.
think that's what a parent wants.
Yeah. And so with the legacy program, what we offer is a turnkey property investment program for our clients, as well as the educational side of the intellectual asset. So we basically educate and help families achieve financial asset or reward and freedom, because I think as parents, what we're looking for is that freedom of time and space. I believe that's the true measure of wealth. So our turnkey program, what it does is it offers clients continuous passive income, which is money while you're sleeping, by growing a rental property portfolio. And we provide analysis, acquisition, on-site property management, and we also help them basically cash flow. And we educate them regarding tax, business, real estate planning, mindset, leadership, parenting, all of that.
Now, is there an age that is too young or too old to invest in real estate?
Well, age is just one factor when it comes to investing. Because, if someone came to me and they're 80 years old and they said, okay, well, this is my last $50,000, I want to invest in a property, I would probably not want to take his money because that's his last money. And he's towards the end of his life, and for that $50,000, $20,000, $10,000 to really return investment, I don't know if it's going to do that for him. But say he had $1 million and he said, I want to put $100,000 down for, a few properties, then okay, well, we can talk about that. I don't think if you're ever too young to learn about real estate investing, and you can start really whenever your parents feel that you're ready.
I think that you can only get a loan. I believe it's 18
so the
years
parents.
old.
Yeah. So the parents can help out with that, and then the property can be put into the trust for the children, and the parents will just be the trustee or the executor until the children turn 18. Our youngest client actually bought her first property when she was 11 years old, and that was about 3 years ago. So there she is. She's 11 years old, and she got a small inheritance from her grandmother, and we helped her invest in, we introduced her to the vendors, and she had a tour, and she chose her first property with the help of her parents.
Jacqueline, what are the pros and cons of putting an investment property in a trust?
I don't really see any disadvantage in putting a property or anything in a trust, because what a trust really is it helps you avoid probate court. And that's where all your money is going to get sucked in, is going to court, trying to decide what happens if you die and what you own, who should it go to. And so in regards to a trust, I think it is necessary to put a property in a trust.
It's so many good things that you can do with the trust. And I know a lot of parents worry about their children getting too much too fast, in other words. With a trust, you can give your children money. You can put them on a certain allowance. You can give them a pay. You can put stipulations in there that they get so much, anything that you want.
Right.
You can put that in a trust. Maybe they get so much when they're 21. But at any rate, I think it's a good vehicle for people to use. The only thing is that what I know about a trust is that if you're going to buy in a trust, or you're going to put a property in a trust, you have to buy and sell it within that trust, and the proceeds are going to be also distributed to the trust.
Yes, you can think of a trust as a business, as a company, right? And whoever is managing it is the CEO of the company.
Right, and you're taxed on the money that you take out. But do you think it's a good idea for people to put their properties in an LLC?
Well, that question is kind of like someone come to you saying, do you think I should get married? Because it really depends on so many things, and there isn't one best answer for everybody. Because one, an LLC gives you really a lot more protection. It gives you in a lawsuit. Now, depending on what state you live in, like in California, it can eat up a lot of your profit because it costs a lot more money to have an LLC in California. So if you have a couple of properties that are just cash flowing a few $1,000s a year, maybe it's not a good idea to put an LLC. A lot of that, like I said, the fee for state of California, I think it's like $800 a year. And different states have different laws. So that question, you really have to sit down with a professional and talk about your situation, and that takes serious analysis with someone who understands your money situation to figure out. And there's really not one answer that fits everyone. And then once you understand the pros and cons, because like you said, there is pros and cons in these decisions, then you have to make a decision what's best for you. Just
right.
Like that question, do you think I should get married, right? Like, it's the same. It's
well,
the
let's
same
look
question.
at the pros and let's look at the cons.
Right. And then that person is going to have to make a decision on what, if the pros outweigh the con and where they are in life and what they want to do, what their goals are. That's why we sit down with our clients and discuss what your goals are. Where are you at right now? Where are your money held? Do you have a home? Do you not have a home? And so that all takes into effect what state you live in. Obviously, now depending on the state that you live in, it might not be beneficial to have an LLC.
Right. It's so important to know what your options are. And a lot of people,
Yes.
I think what they're looking for is any type of protection, especially against any type of lawsuits. I have a neighbor that had re-cemented her sidewalk. And the people that did it, they didn't do such a good job because they left a little lift right there. And would you know, somebody fell?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're suing them now. So,
yeah.
Well,
hopefully they have liability. They're required to have liability insurance on their home. So that would just be taken out of their liability insurance.
Sure.
The home policy. But still, I see what you're saying, because if you don't have that in an LLC, that they could go after your personal money.
Exactly. It could go beyond that.
Yeah. And that's why one thing I love about our program is we can help people answer those questions, because we have attorneys on staff, we have tax professional on staff, and if we can't find the answer, we will definitely send you to the right people that can get you the answer. Great.
I wanted to talk a little bit more in detail about the legacy program.
We are sort of like the middleman. You you are the mortgage holder. You hold the title. Our clients hold the everything. That's your property. So what happens is we find the property, or sometimes our client actually will put an order in, because some people will say, well, I want a single family home, but other people say they want a multi-unit. They might want a 6-plex or a 4-plex. So then we would go to our vendors and say, this is what we're looking for. We do all the analysis to make sure that it's a stable market and that your investment is going into an area that's not going to fluctuate a lot. So when we're presenting you with properties or a list of properties, if you want more than one, you know that we've done all the analysis. Then, let me back up. So when you say you want to buy, when you join the legacy program, we have you pre-approved with our lender. So we know exactly what you can get a loan for. Then from there, we'll know what your goals are, and then we'll make the order, and then, you're in escrow, and just like the same way you would buy any property, your primary residence, at 30 days to 45 days escrow. If it needs to be rehab, our vendors will rehab it. Now, when it comes to rehabbing, we make sure everything is the same. So all of our properties have the same doorknobs, the same paint color, the same flooring. So that way, if anything needs to be fixed, we have it in stock, and we buy in bulk. And then our third-party vendor also manages the property. So we make sure that we vet our vendors. So they have to have at least 10 years of experience. They have to have at least 300 properties under their name, less than 45 days of vacancy. So these are good people that we vet for you. And you're in our program to get information, to get education, but those properties are owned by you. Now, we're hoping after 4, 5, 6 years, you learn more how to do it. You can do it on your own, and then kind of like a parent, right? Like you're there when your kids leave the house. If they need you, you're there to help them. They come back, but they're on their feet and they can do it on their own. And our clients, if they're buying about 1.5 properties a year, in about 10 years, we're seeing about $75,000 to $100,000 they're making in passive income. So basically, you're making your extra income while you're sleeping in about 10 to 12 years.
Now, you find properties all across the United States, right?
We have properties. We have areas that we know are stable markets. So right now, we're in Memphis, Tennessee. We're in Indianapolis. Also, we're moving into Austin and Dallas. First thing is numbers have to look good. And we also have to have boots on the ground. So we have to have vendors that we trust that are on the ground to understand that neighborhood is good, that street is good, and that they're there to manage the property. So we don't have properties all over the United States that we can order because we only want to make sure that it cash flows for our client.
That's a good idea when you say you have boots on the ground to check out the neighborhood and what have you. That's very important because you never know if you're next to a vacant property or across the street you have an abandoned building, if you're the only house on the block or the only house in the road.
Exactly.
The only house for miles. I mean, who wants to live out there?
So we make sure, we make sure that you want to make sure it's a tenant location. There's a lot of people that are renter area. Right. And the most important thing when you're an investor is you want it to cash flow right away. You don't want to be putting money. You don't want to be in the red from the beginning. You want a cash flow. So we don't present any property unless it's cash flowing at least 10%. Our clients are getting 10 to 15% after expenses. If you can't fly out there to look at it, they'll do videos. They'll send it to you so that you can see it.
Great.
And I have to also tell you that I'm in Los Angeles, and so we're used to having a small, tiny condo cost $800,000 to $1 million. Forget about single home. But these properties in the areas that we're looking at, the homes are between $75,000 to $150,000. So for as little as $20,000, we say the price of the car, you could own a home that's cash flowing. You're going to own a home that's worth $100,000, let's say, and you put $20,000 down, but really the tenants are going to pay the $75,000. So where else can you get cash flow and own something that you only pay a quarter of? Someone else is going to pay the rest.
And you teach this to children. Is this a part of the legacy of wealth?
Yes. Because this is what we feel. We feel that families should be united in the same cause, that every member of the family is an asset to have, and you want to have a reason to spend time with each other, to have things to talk about. And we believe you can achieve that when you're in business together, when you're working together on the same stuff. And this is how asset moves from generation to generation.
Right. And when you say children, you're talking about 12, 13, 14, somewhere around that age range.
You know what? I just talk about it with my children at any age, because you don't know, they're probably too young to understand at 5, but how do you know what they're getting in? And so in my business, when my kids were 6 and 7, they were already helping me pass out flyers and doing office stuff and just understanding. And with my radio show, they hear what people are talking about. I don't know how much they understand, but I figure at least it's going through their unconscious mind, and somehow it'll just pull up when they need it.
I don't know if it's my imagination, but I think that children are actually smarter these days. I've never seen so many smart children being born.
I know. Have you seen, I remember I was somewhere, I think I was at the mall or the restaurant, something like that. you see this 2-year-old and it's going through an iPad, like it knows what to do. It's swiping. It even knows how to delete. The mom was telling me it knows how to delete apps and play the apps in there too.
Right. It's unbelievable. I don't know, but we didn't have technology like they have technology now. But
no.
I can't even imagine in our generation being able to do that, but they do it like it's nothing, It's
nothing, right? And so at what age should you start talking about money? Should you talking about business? I say start as soon as possible. Have it a part of your conversation, and maybe they only take in 10% when they're 5, but they'll be taking in 20% when they're 7, and then before you know it, they're talking just like you, and they understand it, and they're interested, involved in what you're saying, and now you have a reason to spend time and to talk about things together.
Now that I think about it, maybe that's what Monopoly was all about. Remember that game?
That's true. Yeah.
They
should really taught a lot.
Yeah, they should have more games like that for all ages.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so that's how you can pass assets from one generation to the next generation. Because remember, we talked about asset not just being financial, we all talked about it being human and intellectual. When my kids aren't at school and I have to go to meet somebody and I can bring my kids, I bring my kids with them. My daughter has gotten tutoring. One of my clients, my daughter was with me, and she ended up hiring my daughter to tutor her third grader. But this is how she becomes a part of who I know is now my client is actually her client and has gotten to know her. And she said, I'm going to refer you to other people because you've been so great. And so, she's kind of too busy probably in high school to be doing a lot of it, but now she's getting a little entrepreneurial spirit. She knows that she can make money, she can start a business. And so those are things where I say, the human asset, I'm introducing them. When I do fairs, I do speaking engagement, my children are in the back room at the table selling my book, handing out flyers or whatever it is. And people love coming up to children and talking to them. They think it's the greatest thing that you have them selling or handing out things.
We haven't had a lot of that in the schools these days.
No.
They're just starting to introduce the entrepreneur programs in the high schools and colleges. They need more of that because it's an alternative for young people. They don't have to necessarily work a 9 to 5. If you have a talent, if you have resources, if you can plan. That's what I like about your program, because you're actually teaching young people that they do have options. Yes.
Yeah. And we use real estate as the tool for people to make money, but really it's about real estate investment is a business, and that's how we teach people is that this is just like any other business. You are the business owner, not the landlord, and you're going to learn about the business laws, the business rules, and about how to basically share this information with your children so you can create that multi-generational legacy. We provide all the analysis and all the teaching. It's just a one-time program fee for life, and that also gives you 12 sessions where we're teaching you, we're analyzing 12 meetings basically where we're seeing where you are. Like we said earlier, every person is a just different situation. So we don't know if they need an LLC or where their money is and who they need to talk to. So we first have to talk to every single person to see where they are, what their goals are, what they have. And so that requires a lot of meetings. And then there's teaching. We're also creating an online library so that people can go and learn it at their own time, because we know parents are very busy, to get educated. We're also going to be doing webinars. Right now we're looking at twice a month. We're going to do webinars, and we'll have live calls so people can call in and ask about their specific question. So the program is constantly growing, and they're going to get more and more. The legacy program is the investment program. The integrative mind is all about the mindset, the leadership, the growing part of the insight, because what we know is you have to get out of your own way first before you're going to do anything. The legacy program really kind of is like two gloves that fit together, because we know it has to start inside your mind. That's why it's called integrative minds, because really it's about a collaboration of your mind with other people's mind to create a new belief and a new set of fear that is going to be an asset for you. And then we have the legacy program that gets you to jumpstart in and start making money right away. And we're there to help you through the whole process.
I think that's wonderful. That's fantastic, because that comes first. Jacqueline, could you tell everyone how they can get in contact with you?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking. They can email me, and I will offer your listener, if they say that they heard me on your show, a 45-minute strategy session. So they can email me at info, I-N-F-O, at integrativeminds.com, and I'll spell integrative. It's spelled I-N, like Nancy, T-E-G-R-A-T-I-V like Victor, E, and then minds with an S. So that's info at integrativeminds.com. And they will get an email to sign up for a time on my calendar, and then we'll strategize for 45 minutes.
You've been listening to Real Estate Today with Yvonne Candy. Don't forget to visit us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all other social media.